Mama, did I pick the wrong day? Noelle Voss had to look away for a moment before she could answer. She turned toward the park, toward the oak tree, toward anything that wasn't her daughter's face, because Willa's face, at 4 years old, still held the particular innocence of a child who genuinely believes that if something goes wrong, it must be her fault. No, baby, Noelle said softly, turning back. You picked a perfect day. And the day was perfect, in the way that made the emptiness worse. The September sky was the kind of blue that belongs on postcards. The grass at Creekside Park was warm and dry. The checkered blanket was spread neatly beneath the oak tree, weighted at the corners with a small cooler, a stack of paper plates, and a cluster of pink balloons that bobbed cheerfully in the breeze, indifferent to everything. There was a birthday cake, chocolate with white frosting, 4 candles. Noelle had made it herself at 5 in the morning, while Willa slept. There were no guests. Noelle had sent the invitations 2 weeks ago to the 4 children in Willa's preschool class, careful handwritten cards with butterflies on them. 3 parents had responded with polite excuses. 1 hadn't responded at all. She understood. Willa's wheelchair made other parents uncertain. Not unkind exactly, just uncertain. That particular uncertainty had followed them for 2 years, since the diagnosis, and Noelle had learned to carry it quietly, the way she carried most things, without complaint, without bitterness, with the steady, exhausted grace of a 27-year-old woman who had been someone's entire world for longer than she'd expected. Willa sat in her wheelchair at the edge of the blanket, her party dress pink and perfect, her dark curls pinned back with a butterfly clip. She was watching the park with curious eyes, not sad yet, just observing, the way children do before they understand what waiting means. Noelle began setting out the plates. Her hands moved because they needed to move. She heard him before she saw him, a small voice, high and bright, saying, "Daddy, there's balloons," with the urgent authority only a 4-year-old can produce. A little boy came running across the grass toward the oak tree, dark-haired and bright-eyed, wearing a striped shirt with a grass stain already on the elbow that suggested the day was going well for him. Behind him, walking with the slightly amused expression of a man accustomed to being led places by a small person, was his father. The man was perhaps 33, tall, clean-cut, wearing a simple navy jacket over a white shirt, dressed like someone who'd had plans that had eased into something more casual. He caught his son's arm before the boy could run directly onto a stranger's picnic blanket. "Briggs, slow down." "But, Dad, balloons." The man looked up. He met Noelle's eyes. She gave a small, polite smile, the kind that said, "We're fine. Everything's fine. Please don't feel obligated." He looked at the blanket, the cake, the 4 candles, the empty plates, the balloons, and then he looked at Willa, who had turned her wheelchair to face the newcomers and was studying the small boy with frank, unguarded curiosity. "Hi," Willa said. "Hi," Briggs said. Then, "Is it your birthday?" "Yes," Willa said. "I'm 4. How old are you?" "4," Briggs said, with the gravity of someone confirming something important. Then he turned to his father. "Dad, she's 4 too." The man, his name was Soren Hale, looked at Noelle again. Something in his expression had shifted. Not pity. Something quieter and more considered than pity. "Would it be all right," he said carefully, "if we joined you? We were just walking. We don't have anywhere to be." Noelle hesitated for only a moment. "We have plenty of cake," she said. Soren Hale sat on the edge of the blanket while Briggs and Willa conducted the serious business of 4-year-old friendship, comparing shoes, debating which balloon color was best, establishing that Briggs's stuffed dog at home was named Gerald, which Willa found extremely funny. Noelle cut the cake. Soren accepted a plate without making it a production. They talked the way people do when something unspoken sits between them, carefully at first. Then, more naturally, the way warmth always eventually finds the gaps. He mentioned Briggs's mother only briefly, that she'd left when Briggs was 18 months old, that it had been the 2 of them since. He said it without drama, the way people state facts they have made peace with. Noelle recognized that particular tone. She used it herself, talking about the diagnosis. "She was fine until she was 2, Noelle said quietly, watching Willa laugh at something Briggs had done with his paper plate. Then one morning she just couldn't move her legs. Transverse myelitis. It sounds like something from a medical drama. It's just our life now." Soren was quiet for a moment. She laughs like the world owes her nothing, he said. Noelle felt something press behind her eyes. She got that from somewhere, she managed. I'm still figuring out where. He looked at her directly, gently. I don't think you have to figure that out. The afternoon moved slowly and generously, the way good afternoons do. Briggs attempted to teach Willa a clapping game he'd invented himself and which had no consistent rules. Willa corrected him with cheerful authority. Soren and Noelle talked about the park, about the neighborhood, about small, real things until the conversation found its own depth without either of them pushing it there. When it was time for the candles, Briggs insisted on helping count them. Willa closed her eyes with the concentration of someone for whom wishes are serious matters. She blew them out in one breath. What did you wish for? Briggs asked immediately. You're not supposed to tell, Willa said. Then she looked at him sideways and whispered something in his ear. Whatever it was made him nod seriously. Noelle caught Soren's eye across the blanket. He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that rearranges something quietly, the kind you don't forget. What Noelle did not know, in that afternoon, was that Soren Hale was the founder and CEO of Hale Adaptive Technologies, a company that designed and produced mobility and accessibility equipment for children, wheelchairs, assistive devices, adaptive tools for kids who navigated the world differently. He had started it at 28, 5 years ago, after Briggs had a temporary mobility issue as an infant that had since fully resolved but which had shown Soren, with the clarity that fear sometimes brings, exactly what gap existed in the market for children's adaptive equipment that was functional without being clinical, dignified, beautiful, even. He hadn't introduced himself by his professional identity. He rarely did in personal settings. He had learned that his company's name changed the way people looked at him, and he preferred to be looked at plainly. When Noelle mentioned, later that week, they had exchanged numbers, easily and naturally, for the children's sake that Willa was due for a new chair and that their insurance was covering only the most basic model, Soren had listened carefully without saying anything. 3 weeks later, a delivery arrived at their apartment. A custom adaptive wheelchair, Willa's measurements, pink and white frame, butterfly details on the wheel guards, a small card. For the girl who blows out all her candles in one breath. Soren. Breaks. Noelle called him immediately, voice unsteady. Soren. You can't. I can, he said quietly. It came from our foundation. We do this. This is what we do. A pause. I should have told you what I do sooner. I just wanted to have cake first. She laughed, the full kind, the released kind. Thank you, she said. Genuinely. Willa thanked me already, he said. Briggs told me she said it was exactly what she wished for. The following spring, Soren invited Noelle to join Hale Adaptive's Family Advisory Board Parents of Children with Mobility Differences, whose voices shaped the company's design decisions. She brought perspectives he hadn't considered. She was direct, clear-eyed, and unflinching in exactly the way the work needed. They moved slowly, as people do when they are both responsible for small hearts. But they moved. One warm Saturday, back at Creekside Park, the four of them shared a blanket under the oak tree again. Willa's new chair caught the sunlight. Briggs was explaining the rules of a game he'd invented, which had, as always, no consistent rules. Willa looked at her mother. Mama, she said, I picked a good day again, right? Noelle looked at the sky, at the tree, at the small family that had arrived in the middle of an empty afternoon, and simply stayed. Yes, baby, she said softly. You always pick a perfect day. Kindness does not wait for the right moment. It simply notices an empty blanket, sits down, and stays until the balloons mean something again. That is all it ever takes. Just one person who decides to stay. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.